In this WrestleTalk news, FTR are unhappy at being removed from AEW's video game. WWE morale is very high. Possible details on that new AEW TV show and more. Subscribe and enable notifications to always on for daily wrestling news videos. With hot news like Vince McMahon eats people. What?
Support WrestleTalk!
As always, let's paraphrase the great Sinead O'Connor because it's been several hours and 38 days since Vince McMahon stepped down and retired from WWE and the sport of professional wrestling. For me personally, and I think most people watching this will agree, the product has been much better for it. Raw and SmackDown are watchable again, and the build to Clash of the Castle has been so good that I genuinely cannot wait for the pay-per-view this weekend, which is the first time in a long time where I felt like that. It also means that people are looking back on the Vince era with slightly more open eyes and examining just what a weird little man he was. Not just the sneezing thing or hating scarves or not knowing what a burrito was despite the fact he'd eaten loads of them, but some of his piss-poor booking decisions. Matt Hardy recently talked about his match with Edge at SummerSlam 2005, which came off the real-life heat between the two after Edge started an affair with Hardy's girlfriend Lita. Matt got himself fired over this and then became a cult icon for internet wrestling fans on message boards, only to go back to the company that fired him and in his first pay-per-view wrestling match back got chopped out by a much bigger star, underlining the idea that Vince will never see Matt as a top guy that we all thought he could have been. But in talking about this on his podcast, Matt talked about Vince McMahon's booking of the match, and in Matt's retelling of the meeting, Vince told him and Edge that he's done many studies on the basic psychology of human beings and animals, which I honestly find hard to believe, and that we as humans are really no different to the animals. In the wild, a bigger animal will eat a weaker one. That's the circle of life. I've seen The Lion King. But in Vince's world, humans are really no different. Matt explains in Vince's words, it's their basic primal instinct and we all have them, even as human beings. If you see someone weaker than you see someone that, this is his words not mine, crippled or in a wheelchair, deep down your primal instinct, you want to destroy them. You want to eat them. You want to eat them alive. That is what we do. You want to take the person who's weaker than you, that is below you in the food chain, and you want to eat them. Vince McMahon has for sure eaten human flesh, hasn't he? Crikey, maybe that's what was in those burritos all those years. It's Soylent Green all over again! On to more serious wrestling news now, and a new report from Fightful Select suggests that things might not be rosy between AEW and FTR. FTR have had a superb 2022, particularly Dax Harwood, who is on course to get a lot of nominations for Wrestler of the Year when it comes to the WrestleTalk podcast End of Year Awards. And the pair have captured the IWGP and Ring of Honor Tag Team Championships to add to their tag team title collection, which also includes the AAA tag team titles. And it looked like we were on course for the pair to also capture the AEW World Tag Team Championships, especially after the Young Bucks won the belt on Dynamite back in June, leading fans to speculate a third meeting between the teams at All Out was set for the tag team gold. That didn't really come to fruition, however, as Swerve in Our Glory won the tag belts just 28 days later. They will now face the Acclaimed at All Out for the tag belts, while the Young Bucks teamed again with a returning Kenny Omega in the Trios Championship tournament, which they'll likely make to the finals of. FTR, meanwhile, are teaming with TNT champion Wardlow to take on Jay Lethal and Impact Wrestling's Motor City Machine Guns. It isn't quite what fans were expecting, and perhaps this is just me putting two and two together and getting backstage heat, brother, but Fightful Select are now reporting that FTR have been removed from the upcoming AEW video game Fight Forever, and we'll have more on that after this.
Before we get on with the rest of the episode, I'd just like to say a huge thank you to this video's sponsor, DraftKings, an official gaming partner of WWE. And with Clash at the Castle this Saturday, they're calling you up to the main roster with $10,000 up for grabs this weekend. Taking part is easy. Just download the DraftKings app, sign up using our promo code WRESTLE, and enter DraftKings free-to-play WWE pool, where you'll answer questions like, who will make a surprise appearance? Come on, Slapjack. And who is walking away victorious? which is actually way more difficult than usual, as Triple H has done a great job making this all feel unpredictable. The customers with the most correct answers will then get their share of the $10,000 in prizes up for grabs this weekend. So download the DraftKings app now and use our promo code WRESTLE to enter the free WWE Prediction Challenge with $10,000 up for grabs. That's promo code WRESTLE now and enter the free $10,000 contest. Only at DraftKings, an official gaming partner of WWE.
According to Sean Ross Sapp, FTR was scheduled to be in AEW Fight Forever at one point, and at least made it to the model phase of the build. That was until spring of this year, when the decision was made to take them out of Fight Forever. The pair were informed about this decision and weren't too happy about it, according to Fightful Select, as wrestlers get a significant bonus for being in video games. It's also worth remembering that back in April of this year, when AEW were in Pittsburgh, they recorded the crowd doing chants for the AEW Fight Forever game, which included Adam Page, Boom, Bebe, Aubrey Edwards, and not just FTR, but also Dax and Cash. If the decision was made to remove FTR from the game in spring, it was a very late call. However, this is the modern era of video games, where games are not a complete package when you buy them. Oftentimes it feels like they're not actually even finished, as day one patches to fix bugs and issues are now commonplace, as is DLC, which can allow for video game companies to keep desirable content out of a game, then sell it back to you for extra cash if you want it. So there is every chance that FTR could be added to AEW Fight Forever via DLC down the line. But if that was the case, surely FTR would have been told this when they were told they wouldn't be in the game. And if they were told they would be in the game at some point, why would they be unhappy about the news, as they'd still get that significant bonus? As I said, some of this is speculation on my part. Not the Fightful Select report, that is an actual report. But this might be one of those things that we look back on later this year. Someone who could be in the video game, or at least as DLC, is the current Ring of Honor TV champion Samoa Joe. And he isn't just the TV champion of Ring of Honor. The reason he's been away from AEW for so long is because he's been the champion of an actual TV show, Twisted Metal, based on the video game of the same name. Mike Johnson of PW Insider first reported that Joe was set to return to AEW at some point soon, and the Twisted Metal showrunner Jonathan Smith confirmed via Twitter that the show has now wrapped, which means that Joe is free to go back to All Elite Wrestling. There is also a chance that Joe could be coming back to a new home for Ring of Honor, as Dave Meltzer reported in the Wrestling Observer newsletter that there has obviously been talk of another wrestling show for All Elite Wrestling, especially as the relationship between Warner Discovery and AEW is so good right now. Since buying the promotion earlier this year, Tony Khan has reportedly been shopping Ring of Honor around to get them TV time. And Meltzer added in the Observer that he's looking to get aggressive with Rampage tapings in October, to the point where he has separated out the tapings of Dynamite and Rampage for that month, so the latter won't be taped after the former. Other things will be taped alongside Rampage, like Battle of the Belts, but there is talk that the new AEW TV show will also be filmed at those Rampage tapings. As mentioned on Saturday's WrestleTalk news, the leading rumor for this new TV show is All Elite Women, a female-centric wrestling product. Since we released that video, Meltzer added on Wrestling Observer Radio over the weekend that AEW and Tony Khan are serious about All Elite Women, but also nothing could materialize from it. He said it's an idea that they were serious about enough to trademark it, but nothing has happened yet. So perhaps these extra tapings will be for the first episodes of the new ROH series. Meltzer also adds that the trademark for All Elite Women could have been done to quell the criticisms levied against Tony Khan that he doesn't do enough for his women's division on Dynamite or Rampage, which, let's be honest, are very correct criticisms. The sort of criticisms that WWE are no longer getting. As mentioned earlier, it's only just been over a month since Vince McMahon stepped down from his creative role in WWE, but the reaction from fans has been overwhelmingly positive towards the new product. Meltzer noted on Wrestling Observer Radio that the last month of TV has really shown that Vince was a hindrance to the company. And it's not just Dave that thinks this. He noted that a lot of talent backstage are feeling really positive about the new regime. And Mike Johnson added on PW Insider that the production team within WWE are much happier now, with one calling the changes night and day, as there isn't anyone yelling at the production truck or the commentary team, which is something that Vince did a lot of. Of course, not everyone is happy, as there are those within WWE who have close relationships with Vince McMahon. Brock Lesnar walked out on that episode of SmackDown where Vince announced he was retiring and had to be convinced to come back, for example. But according to Dave Meltzer on Wrestling Observer Radio, for the most part, the talent is very happy because a lot of the weird Vince-isms are gone that didn't need to be there. A lot of the weird stupidity is out the window. Speaking of weird stupidity, and perhaps that term is synonymous with the booking of one Vince Russo, famed in the wrestling world for some of the best and worst television wrestling has ever seen, with the latter very much outweighing the former. Russo's legacy on the wrestling world will never be a positive one, given how he booked talent into the ground in both WCW and TNA. You could argue that his terrible booking killed the popularity of both companies, but he's now made a very odd claim on his The Brand podcast. According to Russo, he was working with USA Network as a consultant to oversee Monday Night Raw between WrestleMania 36 in 2020 up until WrestleMania 38 this past April. That's right, Vince Russo is taking credit for overseeing Raw for a 2-year period, which has easily been one of the worst 2-year periods of television WWE has ever produced. Never change, Vince Russo. It was reported a few months ago that WWE could be going back to TV-14, ending the PG era. However, those talks have since quietened down, and it looks like it's not going to happen at all now. Meltzer on Wrestling Observer Radio noted that this is likely because the new regime of Nick Khan, Stephanie McMahon, and Triple H don't want to upset lucrative partners like Mattel. But more importantly, the TV-14 conversations with USA Network likely came from when the ratings for Raw were taking a downturn over the last couple of years. Good job, Vince Russo, you sure do know what viewers want. But since the new regime has taken over, the opposite is true. Raw ratings are now peanuts on the up, which means that WWE don't need to resort to a shock tactic like bringing back TV-14 to appeal to their audience.
NXT call-up confirmed. The Triple H regime of WWE has seen several release stars from the black and gold era of NXT return to the company. Since the likes of Karrion Kross, Scarlett, and Dakota Kai returned, many fans have wondered and speculated who would be the first performers to make the jump from the current NXT 2.0 product to Raw and SmackDown full-time.